Today I have the honor of introducing your next speaker. No, she's not going to talk about the cloud. She's not going to talk about AI. She's going to talk about how to be seen, be heard, and be relevant. This is the CEO and founder of Rise Up For You. Her name is Lena Nasserdeen. She has been seen on Amazon, Bloomberg TV, even been in Times Square. She's given 2 TEDx talks, and she's written a #1 best-selling book on Amazon, Rise Up For You. Please give a huge round of applause to our next speaker, Lena Nasserdeen.
Hello. Check, check, check. Can you hear me? Check, check. You can already tell what kind of room it's going to be, right? Awesome. I love that. Well, as you heard, I'm the CEO and founder of Rise Up For You, but I didn't always start that way. So I actually started as a performer. I used to tour the world internationally as a singer and a dancer. Does anyone like to sing or dance? Not one person in this room? Okay. I got one woo. I love that. And interestingly enough, every time I walked into a room, there were hundreds of performers. I always got the center stage spot. Now, if you know anything about performing and singing, you know that center stage is the place that you want to be. They call it the diva spotlight, right? But I was never, ever the best singer, meaning that there were a number of people that were in the room that had much more technical skill than I had. Okay, 4 to 5, 6 singers that were way more advanced technically, and yet I always got the center stage spot. So they used to come up to me and they used to say, okay, Netta, how do I stand where you stand? And I used to say, you know, it's interesting because your parents are musicians, you have parents that are celebrities, you have a 3.5 octave range, I have a 2.5 octave range, and yet I get that center stage spot. Simply because when I walk into a room, I walked into a room with ownership. I walked into a room and I talked to the director. I walked into the room and I recognized at a younger age that if there's 500 people in this room that all sing and dance the same way, how am I going to be seen, be heard, and be relevant? Okay, now fast forwarded about 8 years and I become the executive of an education corporation. 27 years old, I have 200 team members under me. Individuals that had PhDs, master's degrees, bachelors, all the certifications you can think of, and yet they were still constantly getting in their own way of growing in their career, of communicating, of leading, of optimizing their potential. Now, obviously, as an executive, if some of you are, anyone an executive or leader in this room? Okay, anyone a business owner? Okay. So you can imagine, as an executive, that can be frustrating that you have all this amazing talent, technically, all the right degrees, and yet they're not pushing their potential, and it's not only impacting them as a personal professional, but it's also impacting the organizational growth. And now today, of course, I run the company Rise Up For You, as you heard, and we're working with organizations and individuals around the world. We're in over 50 countries, and we see the exact same thing happening. And at the end of the day, professionals and leaders, they all ask the same question. In a world where we can take 2 resumes and put them next to each other, individuals have the same degree, the same experience, how come one person goes further and faster? In a world where we can have a multitude of companies that all do the same thing, we all know that the space is very inundated no matter what industry you're in. How come one company that does the same thing as you goes further and faster? And at the end of the day, people want to know, how can I be seen? How can I be heard? And how can I be relevant? So we're going to jump in. I'm going to share with you 3 strategies today. This is going to be interactive. I'm not going to talk at you for 45 minutes. We're going to do some exercises. We're going to have some conversation. And I'm even going to open it up for a little bit of Q&A at the end because I really believe in the power of you asking customizable questions. Okay, step number 1. I always say, be the billboard that people stop to see. Step number 1 is the easiest point I'm going to give you today. It's something that you can implement right now when you walk out of here. Okay? There are way too many professionals, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, that walk into a room as if they don't exist. There are way too many professionals that forget that individual contribution helps escalate and grow organizational contribution. Now, I stood in the back Some of you were walking and you might have seen me. I do that on purpose. I do that to observe the individuals that walk into a room. How do they walk into a room? How do they carry themselves? Do they go straight to their seat? Do they network with the person next to them? Do they have conversation, or do they walk in as if they don't exist because they don't want to be seen, but at the end of the day, they do want to be seen? And I see this every single time I walk into a room and I speak and we work with our different organizations, every single time. So I'm going to share with you a few strategies. I always say show up to level up. Look around the room. How much color do we see in the room today in clothing? Not very much, right? Bright colors. Okay, so one simple step to being seen and standing out is to wear a bright color. For example, the yellow that I'm wearing. I see yellow in the third row. She's like, don't call me out. Okay, I see yellow in the very, very back. But that's an instant eye catcher. Why? Because in a room that's full of black and brown and navy and white, color instantly attracts the eye. And it's also a conversation starter. Now, do you know how many individuals in the last day and today, if you saw me yesterday, you know what I'm talking about. I had like bright orange on, whatever. Do you know how many people came up to me that I didn't know that said, I love your outfit, I love your shoes. And then we start to have a conversation. What do you do? Where are you from? Let's exchange cards. And now we're building connections, right? We're being seen. To tell you the truth, I love the color black. My whole wardrobe is black. But I realized that when I started to run a business and when I was a performer, I understood that I needed to be the billboard, which means that visually I needed to catch the audience's eye or the director's eye. These are small, simple things that you can do even in a remote world. Even if it makes you a little bit uncomfortable, I think, okay, can I have one shirt that's pink, one shirt that's green, one shirt that's blue, whatever it is, because remember that colors also emulate energy and emotion. And we all carry that, okay? Conscious with your colors and brand representation. So let's talk a little bit about energy. We're still on being seen. Energy is incredibly important, and every single person in this room carries an energy, okay? You're passing your energy to the person next to you, and the person next to you is passing the energy back to you, right? It's going back and forth. When I was an executive, I thought I was the best leader ever. 200 team members under me, as I told you. I thought I was amazing. I'm like 27 years old. I'm an awesome executive. I had an open door policy. Not one team member would come in the room and talk to me. Not one. So then one team member said, well, you're kind of intimidating. And I said, no, I don't think that's true. And then another team member said, well, you're kind of intimidating. And I said, nope. That's not true at all. But I wanted to learn and I wanted to grow as a leader. So I decided to do an anonymous survey. And I asked 200 team members about my leadership as an executive. I was the only executive that did it. Everybody else said, no, we're not doing that. Out of 200 people, 75% of the team said I was intimidating, not relatable, and I looked mad all the time. That was a rough night for me. But I was thankful for the feedback because I realized that my energy, what I wanted to show and what I was feeling in the inside wasn't actually the energy that was being received. You see, my self-assessment was not accurate. According to Business Harvard Review, 95% of leaders think they have accurate self-assessment, only 10% actually do. I was one of the 95 that thought I had accurate self-assessment. In the inside, I felt warm and fuzzy, and I wanted everyone to talk to me, but on the outside, they got a very different perception of who I was. So I needed to shift that energy so that my leadership and my energy can actually emulate what it is that I truly wanted to feel. Okay, so we have fostering an open energy. What kind of energy do you want to promote? Has anyone ever heard of the resting face? Yeah? Okay, being conscious of our face and our facial expressions. Okay, avoid subservient language. So that's all the different pauses that we have when we speak. because sometimes we get uncomfortable with pauses and space when we speak. And then lastly, we're gonna talk about this, are your values. So if I were to ask you right now, what are your top 3 values that you wanna emulate and that you wanna project without opening your mouth, what would they be? What would be the top 3 values? So one of my values is when I walk into a room, of course I wanna project the energy of confidence. And hopefully that's what's being projected. Okay, that's for sure a top value for me. Another value is kindness, right? And understanding that every single person in the room matters. Doesn't matter what your job is, what you do, who you are. And I want to create an energy that I'm open to everyone. I don't care who you are and what you do, right? That's a value of mine. And I hope that when I walk into a room, that's what I'm projecting. Within the 10th of a second, someone is making a judgment about who you are before you even open your mouth. Before you even open your mouth. When you walk into a job interview, when you walk into a networking event, when you walk into a conference. And if you're trying to grow in your career, if you're trying to get stakeholders to support you, investors, if you're trying to run a team, all these little nuances matter. So I want you to take just a minute and I want you to think, what are your top 3 values that you hope to project and emulate as a professional? Top 3, I want you to think about it. Okay, then I want you to ask yourself, if you were to tell me your top 3 values, and I went to 5 people that you knew really well, would they say that those are the top things that you project? Or would they say something different? So I want you to write down, what are my top 3 values that I hope to project before I even open my mouth? And then later on today, I want you to text 5 people that you trust to give you positive and honest feedback and say, what are the top 3 values and energy I project when I walk into a room? And let's see how much is in alignment. Okay, that's an exercise. So that's be seen. Now, let's talk about being heard, showing self-confidence. My team and I, every year, we ask thousands of professionals, not hundreds, thousands of professionals what their number 1 challenge is. 83% say self-confidence. 83%. 83%. My team and I, as Lauren mentioned, we're downstairs in the inclusion lounge. We're doing coaching for free for the next 3 days. Guess what the number 1 thing is when people come in the room? Self-confidence. Imposter syndrome, perfectionist mindset, not feeling enough, right? Even though you've achieved success, you get there and you're like, I still don't feel successful. 83%. Now, back in the day, I was a college instructor, and I asked the college freshmen the same question when they would come in to school. I would ask them about their self-confidence. 80% said they were less worthy than others, and 85% said they didn't believe in their abilities. Where do you think that comes from? That comes from the 83% of professionals that are in the workplace today that are parents of the kids that are in the college. You see, if we don't break that cycle, it keeps repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. Some of you have children that are what we call, the iGen generation, right? That are in the technology space. Some of you have children that are 27, 26, 25 that fall into that percentage. Some of you are 27 and 28 that fall into that percentage of not feeling enough no matter what you do. And I can guarantee that the majority of this room, 83%, are struggling with confidence or confidence factor. And I always say that self-confidence impacts your capacity to communicate. Say that again. Self-confidence impacts your capacity to communicate and to be the leader that you're meant to be and to create clarity in your expression. Now, it's not your fault, okay? Because our whole entire life, we have been taught, and by the way, this is global, right? Because we do this work all over the world. Our whole life, we've been taught to build what I call micro-level confidence, okay? And I talk about this in my book. Micro-level confidence is that we have been taught to build confidence in a category, a competency, or a thing, okay? Think about it. You go to school, K through 12, you go to university, you go get a certificate, whatever it is, you get good grades in this, right? You get an A in this subject. Your whole life, that's what you're taught. That's part of the system, right? And then you get older, some of us go to university, we get degrees, and then we get good grades and a GPA in a certain subject, a certain topic. This is what we call micro-level confidence. So you might be confident in coding, right? I'm confident as a speaker. You might be confident in selling. Whatever it is, you're competent in a thing. You're confident in a thing. That's what we call micro-level confidence. The problem with micro-level confidence, especially in a world with artificial intelligence, which I think is amazing, but we have to learn how to balance it, is that the world is constantly changing, and all this micro-level confidence exists outside of you. And anything that exists outside of you inevitably can and will change. So this is what we saw during COVID. Individuals from around the world were confident in their career, in their job title, in their skill, in their business, and everything overnight changed. And guess what else changed? They came to us and they said, who am I? What's my identity? What's my self-worth? My whole entire life, I thought I was this. And this is how I defined my worth and my value in the world. And it all fell apart, and so did they. That's a dangerous game in a world that is constantly changing and constantly shifting. Think about it with artificial intelligence. In 10 years from now, half of our degrees and skills aren't going to matter. We need to adapt. We need to pivot. And if every time we need to change our skill, our confidence goes all the way back down to the bottom, that's going to be very difficult, that cycle, to do it over and over and over again. What we really want to build is what I call a macro-level confidence, which is a belief in your ability to learn, which is a belief in your ability to grow, which is an understanding that failure is research to success. Think about scientists. They spend their whole life failing. If they're lucky, maybe they'll find one solution in their lifetime of being a scientist. But they don't consider themselves a failure. They consider that this whole time they're building research to find the right solution to solve the problem. Imagine if, as human beings, we thought the exact same way. Macro-level confidence is realizing that perfectionism prevents you from your potential. You don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you have this thing that you want to do, or this project that you want to submit, or maybe a startup that you want to do, or an action that you want to take, and you keep waiting for it to be perfect, and then 1 year goes by, 2 years go by, 3 years go by, and before you know it, 5, 10 years have gone by, and you're like, it's still not perfect. And the whole decade has passed you up. So macro-level confidence is understanding that you are an evolving human being and that you have self-compassion towards your mistakes because you're not a robot. You're not artificial intelligence. Yeah, we might be in the future, I don't know. Okay? So here's what I want to do. I always say the sky is not the limit, it's the mind. We're going to do a little exercise together. You're going to scan this QR code, or you can do it on your paper if you like to, draw the circle. It's up to you how you want to do it. We're going to rate our confidence together, okay? And I'm going to break it down for you. Now, we're going to do this with self-compassion, meaning I don't care what your score is today. It's not about what your score is today. It's about where we can get in the next 2 to 3 months, okay, with some of the strategies that I'm going to provide for you. So I want you to scan the QR code, and I'm going to break down this circle for you. These are the 6 pillars of building self-confidence, okay? Pillar number 1 is self-talk. So that's the narrative that's in your mind. Is it positive or is it negative? Are you your number 1 cheerleader or are you your number 1 critic? Are you constantly managing your thoughts so that they can serve you? Or are you listening to your thoughts so much that they sabotage you? 1 through 10. 10 being amazing, 1 being danger zone, and then everything else in between. Okay? Pillar number 2 is trusting your intuition. You know that thing that's in that feeling in your stomach that says, I should do this. Oh, that doesn't feel right. How many times do you say, I'm just going to ignore it? Or do you say, you know what, I think I need to listen to that? 1 through 10. 10 being amazing, 1 danger zone. Number 3, taking risk. And I don't mean jumping out of an airplane. I mean taking risk that makes sense for you on a daily basis. It could be having an uncomfortable conversation, right? It could be walking into a room with executives and leaders and expressing yourself so that you can get to the outcome that you need to get to. It could be having uncomfortable conversations with stakeholders. Those are all risky things that feel really uncomfortable, right? So 1 through 10. I just had this the other day, actually. We have a new client, a big client, a company, and we did a training about a week and a half ago. And in the training, you know, we're teaching emotional intelligence, and we're cultivating a space of, you know, psychological safety so that people can talk about emotional intelligence and move through some things as executives. Well, one of the executives reprimanded another executive in the training that I'm in while they were in a moment of vulnerability. Okay, so that executive is the highest person in the company. I'm not gonna say something right there because it would be inappropriate and unprofessional. But I had to have a conversation with myself and say, they're a really big client, but out of integrity, I think it's important for me to provide the feedback that psychological safety was broken in that training, and that's a little bit scary because what if they don't like the feedback, and then what if they decide that they don't want to work with us anymore, right? That's all the stuff that's going on in my head. But I decided to take the risk. And I said, privately, I said, I'd love to have a quick phone call with you. We had a phone call, and I professionally expressed, here's what I observed. Here's my recommendation. You don't have to take it if you don't want to, but I know we want to create a place, an environment of growth, and this is what I observed, and here's how I think we can solve it. You know what he said to me? Thank you for being honest. Thank you for your transparency, and I'm going to solve it. I said, awesome. But I was scared. That was a risk, okay? Now we go on to number 4, that's self-promotion. A lot of individuals struggle with this pillar, self-promotion. Being able to stand in your accomplishments, being able to stand in your success, being able to receive compliments and take them and say, thank you so much. Being able to walk into an organization and say, here's the growth, here are the results, and here are the outcomes I have achieved in the last 2 years. And understanding your value and what you bring to the table. Some of you raised your hand that you're business owners and you're entrepreneurs. I have to tell you, when I first started my business, that was the key to get out there. Because no one's gonna push your business, no one's gonna push your brand, even in your career. No one's gonna do that except for you. You have to be willing to talk about yourself and the accomplishments and the values that you bring to the table. A lot of times we wait for people to call us out and to validate us and to say, you're amazing. But you have to realize that in a company of thousands, that you're amazing, it's not really gonna happen. You have to be the one to step forward and say, here's what I brought to the table, and I wanna shine a light on it because I wanna grow in my career, or I wanna take this path, whatever direction it is that you wanna go into, 1 through 10. The next one, that's a tough one too, setting healthy boundaries. Being able to say, thank you so much for thinking of me. Right now, I'm completely at capacity. Can you call me next time? I'd love to help, but in this current moment, I have to say no. Okay, I have to say no. Remember that you can't give what you don't have. So if you have an empty bucket, you're not serving anybody. Because what you're doing is only producing maybe 30% of your potential on a project versus giving it 100%. And I know that there's different industries and there's different climates that can be very high stress. And so sometimes there's a lot coming at you. But if you can create healthy boundaries in the areas that you have full control over, or that you can take back ownership over, that's gonna create more capacity for you to be the best that you can be. You know, we tell this to our clients all the time. We're constantly on stage. We're constantly coaching and training. It's a high energy, high impact industry that we're in because we're always in the spotlight. So we have very strong boundaries within our company of when we start work, when we end. You know, we don't do things on the weekend unless, of course, we get hired to do something amazing. And we only do that not because we want to say no, but because if we take on and we pick up the phone at 1 a.m. and we're answering emails till 2 a.m., then when I get on stage for you today, I'm going to be stumbling over my words. I'm not going to have the energy and the capacity to give you everything that I have. And then that's not fair to you. And lastly, growth mindset. Do you believe in your ability to learn? Do you live in the I can't period? Or do you live in the I can't, comma, but I'll figure it out. But I'll learn it if you give me a little bit of time. But if you give me some resources, I can make it happen. I always tell this story, and he doesn't like it, but I'm going to tell it anyway. I have a family member. When he was 21 years old, no college degree, he got a phone call from a movie studio, a big movie studio called Paramount. Some of you might know it. And they came to him and they called him and they said, we heard you were a really amazing worker. And he said, I'm 21 years old, I don't have a degree, I've worked, but how did you hear about me? Well, we just heard you were a great worker. He's like, okay. So he goes to the interview, and there's professionals that have been in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years, 40, 50, 60 years old. He's 21. He applies for the job. And the individual at the time says, why should I hire you? You have no experience. You have no degrees. Like, you don't know anything about this industry. Growth mindset and confidence. He said, you're right. I have no experience. I don't know anything about this industry, but here's what I could tell you. I'll work really, really hard. I believe in my ability to grow. Anything you give to me, I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to learn it, and I'm going to accelerate. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to make it work and have great success here. Well, guess what? He got the job. And he was there for over a decade, simply because he believed in his ability to learn. And he displayed his confidence, and he clearly self-promoted, right? He self-promoted his strengths. So I know I say all this, and you're probably thinking, yeah, but how do I grow my confidence? So we're gonna do a quick exercise, okay? It's not on this PowerPoint. I'm improvising in the moment. 4 B's to believing and betting in you. Okay, 4 B's. B number 1. What is the belief, just put down one right now, one limiting belief that you believe is getting in the way of your success? It could be that's getting in the way of your success as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a leader, as a professional, whatever it is. What's one limiting belief that you think you have right now that's getting in the way for you? Okay, I want you to think of one belief. Now, I want to be very, very clear that self-doubt and these beliefs that we have, most of them are negative for everybody, even for me, and I do this on a daily basis. So it's not about completely getting rid of self-doubt. That doesn't exist. I would be untruthful to you if I told you, let's crush self-doubt. It doesn't really happen. It's about managing the self-doubt and managing the beliefs so that it serves you versus sabotages you. Okay, big difference. So what's one limiting belief? Write it down. B number 2 is the backstory. What's the backstory of that belief? How many of us have children or were a child at one point? All of us. Think about children. When they're born, they bounce off the wall, they do what they want, they say whatever they want. Has anyone ever met a baby that tried to learn how to crawl, and then they fell, and they fell, and they fell, and then they looked at you and they said, nope, just not gonna walk for the rest of my life? We've never seen that, right? Babies that get back up, and they keep trying, and they keep trying, and they keep trying, even when they fall. It's not until they get a little bit older that people, teachers, society, romantic partners, whatever it is, they say, no, you can't do that. Nope. Or they say, no, you're not good enough for that. Or they say, yeah, I cannot consider you at all. You're not a good fit. It's not until we get older that all that stuff starts to come into our belief system. And then before you know it, you're 20, you're 30, you're 40, you're 50 years old, and now you're a professional in the workplace. You're trying to evolve, you're trying to grow, and all those beliefs from the last 20, 30, and 40, and 50 years are impacting your ability to move forward. So I want you to ask yourself, what's the backstory of the belief that you wrote down? It could be, I remember very clearly my former leader. They said this to me, it made me feel a certain way. Now I'm at a new job, and all I can do is hear that former leader in my head telling me that I'm not good enough. It's possible. I see some of you reacted to that, which means that could be your story. Okay? The third B is the most important, and that is the behavior. So far we've had what's the belief, what's the backstory of the belief, and B number 3 is what's the behavior that it's causing in you. You see, all of our beliefs, they create behaviors. I've been doing this for a long time, so I can tell about somebody's belief system just by the way they behave. The way they walk into a room, the way they shake my hand, the way that they converse with other individuals, I can tell what their belief system is because your behaviors are representative of your thoughts. So I want you to ask yourself, what's the behavior that it's causing in you that you want to shift? It could be the behavior is that when I'm in meetings, I don't raise my hand and speak up, even though I have something really important to say. It could be that I become overly assertive when I don't need to because I feel like I need to have my voice heard. So I want you to ask yourself, what is that behavior? I remember when I was younger, when I was a leader, when I would be up in front leading my team, sometimes they would raise their hand and they would say, why do we have to do that? Now, I was a different person 10 years ago. So in the moment, I would say, because I said so. I'm the boss and I told you that's what we're gonna do. That's the behavior that I had. But then I started to ask myself, I don't really like that behavior. That's not great leadership. So I started to ask myself, why am I behaving that way? And I realized that in my head, I had the belief, are they trying to negate me? Are they asking me questions to make me look bad because I'm 27 and I'm young and I'm the youngest one in this company? Are they just trying to put me on the spot? These were all the things that were in my head that no one ever said to me. I just created them. And because I had these beliefs, I created a behavior as a leader that wasn't a great behavior. And the second I was able to build that self-awareness, to break it down in my self-confidence, I was able to show up differently. So then the next time they asked a question, I said, that's a really great question. Let me break it down for you. And then if you have any more questions, come see me later. Shifted the behavior because I got to the belief. Okay? I know I'm wearing, yellow heels and a yellow jacket, and it sounds like super easy. But I'm going to share a story with you. I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable because that's my style. 5 years ago, this company didn't exist. 5 years ago, I was an executive. I didn't know anything about training, coaching, consulting. I didn't even know who Tony Robbins was. 5 years ago, both of my parents passed away by the time I was 31 years old. And I lost everything as an executive, helping my parents, trying to survive through different sicknesses. So when I was 31, I had $100 in my account, no job, no car, 2 luggage, and both of my parents passed away. Because I had the macro level confidence, because my parents gave it to me, which is I wasn't defined by my executive role. I wasn't defined by the money and the cushy 6 figures in the house. I wasn't defined by that because they taught me to have that macro confidence. I was able to build something even when I was at the very, very bottom. My mother would be in the hospital. I would run across the street to 24-hour fitness, take showers. I would come back to the hospital, open up the laptop. How do you build a business? What's a podcast? Who's Tony Robbins? I don't have a business degree. My degree is in executive leadership. But because that macro confidence existed, I was able to build more micro level confidence. And I share that story with you because sometimes you see a speaker or someone on stage and you're like, yeah, maybe they were born, maybe they got funding for their company. And you need to understand that these strategies I implemented on myself, and they're proven methods that can work for you in every way, whether it's growing a business, being a better leader, being a better parent, being a better communicator, whatever it is that you want. Okay, we're gonna go to number 3, how to be seen, how to be heard, how to be relevant. We live in a world where you absolutely can establish yourself as a leader. You don't need to wait for anybody to tell you that you're a leader and to give you a role. You can create thought leadership on your own. Because the way that the world is going with social media, with online presence, with creating influence and impact, you have the ability to take ownership over what you bring to the table and push it out there as a thought leader on multiple platforms. Okay, so let's talk about LinkedIn for a second. 3 must-dos that every professional I highly recommend you do today. Step number 1, build your LinkedIn as soon as possible as a thought leader. Think about this. If you're in career transition and you're looking to go to another job, guess where they're gonna go? LinkedIn. If you're a business owner and you're looking to get more exposure and push your business out there, guess where they're gonna go? LinkedIn. If you're trying to grow in your career, guess where people are gonna go? They're gonna go to LinkedIn. How many of you have a LinkedIn account that you're on at least 3 times a week? Raise your hand nice and high. Okay, a couple of you. How many of you are posting 2 to 3 times a week? Maybe 7? So this is a perfect opportunity. Every single one of you are experts in your industry. Every single one of you have value that you can add in this world. You can go onto LinkedIn, you can establish your voice in your industry, in your expertise, and you can start to gain credibility and also exposure. I have a lot of people that are in the corporate space that have started adding value on LinkedIn in their industry, and guess what? Their company says, oh, you're getting a lot of eyes on you. We want to make sure you're not taken by a recruiter. We're going to promote you. And then they get promoted again. And then now they're seen as a thought leader, and they get opportunities to speak in their company. And then slowly they start climbing the career ladder because they're establishing themselves as a thought leader, and no one's telling them to do it. They're doing it on their own. Okay? Value add videos. I say less than 60 seconds. Every single one of you, you're at one of the biggest Google conferences of the year. When you're done, you walk out of this room, turn on the video. Hey, I'm at this amazing Google Next conference here with amazing professionals from around the world, learning, growing, and connecting. See you next year. Click, done, add it to your LinkedIn. Super simple things like that that can establish that you're in action and you're out there and you're growing and you're doing cool things. And lastly is strategic networking. Strategic networking means that instead of just showing up and networking and saying hi to people, is adding value. Meaning that instead of just going to a networking event saying, how can I add value? Do you need some support? Do you need someone to introduce the event? Do you need someone to help you in the trenches? Because when you add value and you get the microphone in your hand, guess what happens? Now you get exposure. Now you're seen as a thought leader. So my team and I were in multiple chambers across the US and North America, right? Alberta, Edmonton, all throughout America. Every time we join a chamber, we say, what committee can we be on so that we can add value and support the Chamber of Commerce? What can we do to add value? And guess what that does? It now puts us directly into a position of authority where people will see us as a thought leader opposed to just another chamber member that's paying for a membership. Be seen, be heard, be relevant. I always say the greatest tragedy is wasted human potential. Don't let that be your story. Thank you. Okay, here's what I want to do. This is my favorite part. This is my favorite part, so I hope you engage with it. We have 5 minutes. I want to take some questions. Please don't be afraid. You can ask any question you want. There's a microphone right here. We have time for probably 1 or 2 questions. Is there anybody that would love to step up to the microphone? You can ask any question at all that you want. In the meantime, while we're waiting, I'm going to share with you my LinkedIn. Okay, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to. You can ask me questions there too. And then also, we always provide free gifts. Okay, this is a Master Success course. It's totally free. 8 videos on emotional intelligence, confidence, public speaking, all the soft skills that we never really learn that are really, really critical for your growth. It's totally free. You can help yourself. Okay, and while we're waiting for another question, I'm going to change the slide here in a second. We would love some feedback on this session. I like to grow. I also want to know, if you wanted to see something different. And then lastly, thank you.